There's reality, and there's stories about reality. You might think that you know the difference between the two. If you do, then you're enlightened. But I would ask you to examine that conclusion very, very carefully. We all believe in our stories, so much so that we don't even want to call them stories. And one example you can test yourself with is the story of the body. Is the body real, or is it a notion? Is the body a physical reality, or is it a story? Is physical reality a story? Yes, it is. Physical reality is a story. The body is a story. They are not real. They're not real in the absolute sense. They're real in the consensual sense. We have a consensual reality, a reality that we subscribe to in terms of our culture, language, communication. But spiritually we need to drop all that, because that involves stories. Language is about stories. Whenever we want to communicate something, we're telling a story. We're creating notions, concepts. The only way to realize this is to come back to the immediate experiencing, to direct the attention away from all notions it's got and to itself. This attention is consciousness, it's awareness. It's in essence pure. It's what allows everything to come into awareness. Is it possible to do this? Or are we still saying, but reality is like this, reality is like that, reality is physical, I have a body, there is a world out there, that's obvious, you cannot question that. This is what Sikhidhvaja has been struggling with. And Kumbha was trying to get him to look into why he's so caught up in his notions. This is ignorance, this is described as ignorance, being caught up in notions. He's had some realization of the truth, but this ignorance, this involvement with notions, this belief in reality, that's a good way of putting it actually, belief in reality. Do you have a belief in reality? Well, then it must be a notion. How can all that be dropped? And Kumbha's had a go, but I don't think it was very convincing, and I don't think Sikhidhvaja is very convinced. Sikhidhvaja asked, if all this, from the creator to the pillar, is unreal, how has this real sorrow come into being? So everything from the notion of a creator God to a pillar holding up your roof, if all that's unreal, how has this real sorrow come into being? This is what Sikhidhvaja is experiencing: sorrow, discomfort, pain. Kumbha replied, this delusion of the world existence attains expansion by its repeated affirmation. When water's frozen into a block, it serves as a seat. When you assert that something is real, and when enough people assert that it is real, it becomes a fact. Only when ignorance is dispelled does one realize the truth. Only then does the original state manifest itself. You have to go against all of consensus reality. You have to go against what people describe as common sense. The common sense experience. But you need to leave all that. You take your cue from yourself, not from the consensus reality. It's important to be able to operate in the consensus reality, otherwise you'll just die, your body will fade away. But if you're interested in realizing the full implications of your existence as a human being, then you want to direct yourself to spiritual understanding and dispel all notions of conventional, consensual reality and come back to the essential experiencing, which is what's going on right now. All we're being asked to do is be with what is going on right now without classifying it, without processing it, without filtering it, without judging it, without saying how painful or how blissful it is. Just being with it, open, being open, more open, wide open. When the perception of diversity is attenuated, then this samsara ceases to be experienced and you shine in your own original glory. So the perception of diversity is thinking about it, it's classifying things, weighing things up, judging things, identifying things. This is cognition, this is the cognitive process. We can drop that. That's all part of the consensual reality. Thus, you are the supreme primordial being. This body, this form, etc. have come into being on account of ignorance and misunderstanding. All these notions of a creator and of a creation of diverse beings have not been proved to be real. When the cause is unproven, how can one take the effect to be real? So it's all notional. How can it be otherwise? Everything is based on memory. What is the reality of memory apart from its notional nature? If you believe notions are real, then fine. But a notion is no more real than a dream. And we're not interested, spiritually we're not interested in notions. We're interested in concrete experiencing. Spirituality is actually concrete. It's ignorance. It's the opposite of spirituality, which is notional, which is abstract, which is airy-fairy. Spirituality is so solid. And yet we've got the other idea, haven't we? The spirituality is somehow airy-fairy and being a bit wafty and cut off from reality. Whereas it's reality that's usually cut off from reality. All these diverse creatures are but appearances, like water in the mirage. Such a deceptive appearance ceases on being inquired into. This is what the scientists find, don't they? When they start looking into reality, it disappears through their fingertips, becomes empty space, it becomes energy, becomes quite insubstantial. In fact, this is what the Large Hadron Collider that was recently fired up in France, Switzerland. They're trying to understand how matter comes into being. They cannot explain matter. Maybe matter doesn't exist. There's a thought.